Welcome to Built, Trusted, Chosen, the podcast for leaders and marketers in trades and construction. Hosted by Wes Towers from Uplift 360.
G'day, Craig. It's good to have you on the podcast today. Built, Trusted, Chosen. So really honoured to have you and to unpack some of your stories. So just briefly, if you'd like to tell the audience who you are and what you're doing these days, and then we'll unpack it further as we progress.
Sounds great. Thanks for inviting me, Wes. This is an honor. So my name's Craig Leonard. I'm owner of Leonard Crafted Homes. We build luxury custom homes in Texas, United States of America. And we also own a couple of trades. So we own antler insulation. We do all types of insulation. So we get a unique view of being a general contractor as well as a tradesperson. And they're certainly very different, but it's really been nice having a view of both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the audience will no doubt learn a lot from your journey. And I know you've got a really interesting story and a certain focus with what you're up to these days. Do you want to go into some of that story of what led you into the career path and the business path that you've taken?
Certainly. So just kind of a quick history of where it started. My father, well, actually my grandfather built homes, but he was born right about 1900. So back then you didn't have a lot of home building businesses. You built your house and you helped your neighbor build their house, and but he was a carpenter. And then my father started building custom homes as he got of age to do that. And so I'm third generation home builder. So I've spent most of my life on job sites, but after high school, I went to secondary to be a teacher. I was a high school teacher for almost a decade, and I taught ag science, which is agricultural science and technology. So I taught animal science and welding, and naturally, those were the fun classes. So I really enjoyed that. But I felt a strong calling that God says you need to go back and join your family business. So did that, joined back into the family business in 2018 and started building custom homes then instead of teaching. So fast track forward a little ways. I've got a lifetime of experience in this, but have only professionally done this since 2018. Well, about 2 years ago, my wife started getting really sick, and we could not figure out what was going on. We bought the home that we lived in years ago. I didn't build it. We bought it when we got married, and we went to lots of doctors, and she was having symptoms that mirrored MS, that mirrored rheumatoid arthritis, things like that. And we're in our 30s, and we really shouldn't be kind of dealing with that kind of stuff yet. Come to find out, we had a mold problem in our home, and we ended up losing our home, and we tore it down. We went all the way to dirt and had to rebuild it, which spawned a lot of questions in my mind, because I felt like the home that we lived in was well built. It had standard building practice. It passes inspections and everything like this, but it was not okay. And unfortunately, it was because of a lot of what we consider standard building practices. There was water infiltration and or collection from humidity and from other things going on in the home, which were making us sick. Our kids started to show symptoms. I started to show symptoms. And mold's nasty. It's a neurotoxin. It gets inside of your cell and eats at your mitochondria. It doesn't let you detoxify. It's awful. So I jumped headfirst into learning about why is this happening, because immediately my first thought was, I've got to get my family safe. But even more so, I'm still building homes for people. I want to make sure that we are overcoming these obstacles so that we don't have any of this growth happening in these homes. So I began the journey of becoming a building biologist so that I can understand the relationship of the built environment in which we live and our bodies. And really that was the first step into a journey of really drinking through a fire hose. And trying to understand what do we need to change, and we need to do it now.
Yeah, I can understand that. That's a huge thing. When your family are really suffering from for health concerns, that takes the first priority. But I suppose, and you felt called to get it back into the building space. It seems like a real alignment with that. Obviously, building custom homes, but also seeing the challenge of what a bad home can be. That
Right.
alignment, those two things created what your business is now. So out of what was a horrible scenario came an opportunity to help and serve a lot of other people in the same space.
That's right. Yeah, it's really turned out to be a massive blessing. And I mean, we see that across our lives. A lot of the hard times, the struggle, those are the moments that we learn, the moments that we actually excel and go to the next level. And and that's been a really neat calling to really lean in those tough times, and don't shrink back and be fearful in those times, but really lean in, get through them, and when you come out of them, you're going to be on another level.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so you mentioned the home that was hazard from the mold perspective. It met all the basic criteria to a degree and was all approved and all that kind of stuff. Um, that's really interesting. Do you feel as though the standards are not as high as they need to be, or what do you think the downfall was in that scenario?
Yeah, I think that the standards need to be updated. So what's happened is that about 20 to 30 years ago, a lot of building programs started coming out to make homes very highly efficient. And in
Yes.
order to do that, we needed to stop the air exchange with the outside. So
Yes.
what happened is that we started experimenting for decades, because let's face it, construction's not on the leading edge of technology most of the time. We wish it was, but we're not lead adopters in a lot of these spaces. Um, and so we were experimenting as an industry of how do we create more efficiency, and that's where the green homes came from. And green homes have nothing to do with health and everything to do with energy efficiency. So we
Yeah.
started tightening homes and stopping air gaps and creating a tighter box, which in fact exactly what creating an interior ecosystem, if you will. Um, Looking at this as a building biologist and understanding the relationship of the built environment and the people living inside, we use nature as the gold standard. We uh, believe the assumption that God created nature, it works well, except that we now want to live inside of a box, which is our house. And
Yeah.
and so that's where the problem comes. That's why a lot of this was not that big of an issue until the air conditioner started being introduced to a home. And now we want
Right.
to keep it at the same temperature all the time. And previously we didn't have that. We either had window airflow, door airflow, and a furnace to provide heat. We didn't have 72 degrees 24 hours a day. And so we start tightening up homes, we start trying to keep them the same temperature. Now we're creating temperature deltas and temperature differences, and we're creating a lot of condensation. We're creating um, moisture. Our bodies are
Mm.
emitting moisture all the time. The quantity of liquid that comes out of our breath, out of cooking, out of taking a shower, it's staggering how much moisture. Our homes are actually exhausting because you can measure it on our homes, and it's really neat to see how many gallons of water we pull out of the air every day.
Mm.
Um, that's just one piece of this. But back to where did this happen? We started using air conditioners, we started tightening up homes, but we were not then doing a good job of conditioning that air. And I don't mean for temperature only. So we gotta provide temperature conditioning, moisture conditioning, and con particle conditioning. So that's
Mm.
going to be your viruses and bacterias and molds and air pollution, pollens. No matter where you're at in the world, I'm sure there's trees and grasses that produce pollens, and they create allergy issues for people. Well, those get trapped
Yeah.
inside homes too. Every time you open a door and close the door, some come in, but they rarely go out. So we needed to control all of those things within the air, but then we also have water in homes. And I love that I have a sink that I can go turn on and brush my teeth, but that water can also be my greatest enemy. So I have to be very cautious of how that's done. Um, Pinhole leaks, minor leaks, things like that. A lot of times people say that's not that big a deal. I'll call a plumber tomorrow. We'll get that fixed. Well, that is a big deal. So
Yeah.
we're installing monitoring systems, whole home monitoring systems to make sure that our plumbing system is not um, allowing water out places it shouldn't. Basically, um,
Yeah.
so so we tighten up homes. Now we're saying we're we're going to make this home 72 degrees, but then we put up human beings in them and they start cooking and showering in them and we get a lot of humidity. Um,
Yeah.
and we're not removing that efficiently. So mold can start to grow at 55% relative humidity, which is doesn't feel humid, but it is. Um, so anyways, I can get way down into these details, but fact is we started tightening up homes and then not doing well with the tight home.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you mentioned that generational in your family, people building homes. I mean, 100 years ago, that the homes probably had ventilation. They kind of intuitively knew that the ventilation was important. I mean, I remember I had an office in an old building which was actually built for migrant housing here in Australia. So this double brick, really solid place, but the massive gaps in the bricks for ventilation purposes.
Right.
That's just how they built back then. But these days, everything's sealed. So if I look around, I'm in an apartment right now, built in 2015, I believe, but it's airtight. It's double glazed, everything's super airtight. So nothing's escaping out of here, and all that breathing out that I do, probably is somewhat of a concern in this place here. That makes a whole lot of sense. What a So is there much you can do to remedy the issues if a house is already built? Obviously, if you're custom building, you can do a whole bunch of things to get that stuff
Sure.
done right. But what can you do to mitigate some of the risks in retrospect?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of this greatly depends on what your climate is.
Yeah.
If you're in Australia versus Texas versus a very cold, dry climate, some of these recommendations are certainly going to change because those climates are putting the hot and the cold in different locations, meaning inside or outside. Um,
Yes.
what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the amount of temperature difference that we have between levels of the home. So having an unconditioned attic space in our area was super common. So we would insulate the ceiling, not the
Yes.
roof deck, and our HVAC system was in the unconditioned attic. So we've got an air handler that is in an attic, and in the summer it's 150 degrees. And inside the coil of that air conditioner, it's 50 degrees. So we've got a 100-degree delta. What happens is it starts raining inside those air ducts and just moisture like crazy. And then we've
Mm.
got heat all around these air ducts that have moisture inside of them. And a lot of times these it was very popular, and it's still honestly still pretty popular to use duct board to build your plenums and some of your longer runs and trunk lines. That's porous, it absorbs this moisture, and it's just a beautiful dark place for mold to grow. That's one
Mm.
area. So moving to conditioned attic spaces, again, with my insulation company, we do this a lot. We retrofit homes with conditioned attics. We'll go in, we've got massive vacuums, and we'll suck out all the fiberglass or whatever's in the ceiling for the
Mm.
insulation. and we'll get all that out of there, and then we'll do a foam on the roof deck to give that insulated attic space. And there's a lot of controversy around spray foam for a lot of different reasons, and I'm on both sides of that, honestly, because from a health standpoint, I don't like what the foam does. From a performance standpoint, I love it. So we have
Yeah.
found a product that our company uses that's a low VOC product, has all the thermal barriers and things. So it's a very safe product. But that's one thing you can do in a home that's already built. And probably the biggest return on investment would be doing that. Um,
Yeah. Got it.
and then if that air conditioning system has been in that home for a while, really investigating that hard and making sure that um, the ductwork and the plenum and really the system doesn't need to be replaced to remove that microbial growth that's happening inside those air ducts. But it's going to keep happening if you don't get it into a conditioned space. Um, and that's one way to do it. There's other ways. It really depends on the architecture of the home. Um,
Yeah.
we work very closely with architects as we design our custom homes, and architects that are willing to really go on this journey with us. Um, one, they look excited because it's kind of like this is something a little different train of thought, and some of them say this is nothing new. They've done this in commercial forever, and I say that's right, they have. And in residential, we don't um, until
Yeah.
until we started, and there's a few other builders that are adopting it, but commercial construction has used these ventilation systems, has used these insulation techniques. Um, the moisture barriers that we're using, they've been using them for a decade or more, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting how when we communicate with our trades, some of them say it looks like y'all are building this commercial, and well, fact is, some of those methods work really well.
Mm. It's interesting, and the different climates obviously have a big, massive part to play. I mean, I'm from Australia, and we have lots of different. Sometimes people are not aware of just how big Australia is and the different climates we have. So we have really humid climates and drier climates. So in the drier areas, there's some people who might have the evaporative coolers, so it's sucking air through water pads. I've been in homes where you can smell when they turn that thing on. There's a smell, so it's got to be mold in the pads itself. Surely that can't be all that great. Do you guys? What's your climate where you are?
Yeah, so we are 10 months out of the year, we are above 75 degrees. Probably 6 months of those years we're above 90 degrees. So it's really hot. Typically, we get about 2 weeks of cold weather in the year, and about 2 weeks of mild weather, and the rest is pretty warm. But we're pretty dry from a rainfall standpoint, but from a humidity standpoint, we're not that dry. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, we average anywhere from 60 to, well, on average 60 to 80% relative humidity at all times. In the colder, the when the cold dry air blows through, it does go down, of course. Um, but just because it's cold doesn't mean it's dry. There's a lot
yeah,
of cold climates that are humid. So it really does depend on that. And there's actually um, there are climate zone maps that are out there, especially in the insulation world, that dictate what code says you need to do for your insulation and your thermal barriers and your envelope. So there are some recognized designations all throughout the world of climate zones.
yeah. No, I understand. So I certainly see a fair few builders who are uh, focused on the energy efficiency of housing, and obviously a lot of nations are pushing toward some standards in that space. But it seems, as you're saying, the healthy homes are not really a big focus just yet. Certainly in my world, I mean, I think you're the first guy I've spoken to in that space. Is it kind of growing, that industry in your area or in the States, or
Not
no?
really, not super fast. I know I know less than a handful in Texas that I know of. There's probably more, but that I know of and have communicated with that do this. Um, so no, it's not. But to touch on what I mentioned earlier, Nita's brought up is this energy efficiency, right? That we are being pushed for that, and there's rebates for that. And fact is, if you focus on making the home healthy, by default, it's energy efficient because of how we're doing that. I'll give you an example. The home that we lost, we it had an unconditioned attic. We didn't paid in to cool the attic. You know, a lot of people think that it's costing more because we're now cooling the attic space and heating it and all of that. Well, the home that we built back is 1,000 square feet bigger. Um, and it has all these systems that I'm telling you about that we need to have. And I haven't even gone over a lot of those, but there's more electrical systems in the home. And my energy bill on the new house, which is larger, is $60 to $80 per month less than my old house, which was
Wow.
not didn't have a conditioned attic. It just was your standard construction. So by default, I didn't care what my electricity bill was when I built this house. Obviously, I was focused on health. Um, and by default, because of how we built it, it's operating better. It's called high performance construction. And because of these systems working together, there's nothing fighting another system and creating inefficiencies. They work together. Um,
Yeah.
and once you get that home conditioned, it's easy to keep it conditioned. You don't have to
Yeah.
continually run the system. There's nights that it's 80 degrees or 90 degrees outside, and our system won't even come on. Um,
Yeah.
but our ventilation is still running. We still have airflow, and so it really makes for a comfortable home to be in.
Yeah. And so taking it to market, because there'll be a lot of assumptions that probably are incorrect, that opposite to what you're saying. So it's going to be a whole bunch of extra expense to get this stuff done, and it's going to be less energy efficient. There might be assumptions. Are there assumptions like that
There
in
are,
thinking?
yeah. So when I start talking to a client or a potential client about our building practices, and I get them really excited about the healthy home, and then I start telling them what systems we have to use, and they start just assuming dollar signs. Is it more expensive? Yes. Simple answer. Yes. But what we found is it's 3 to 5% on the total cost of the home different than your standard construction practice, which is like that's that's the cheapest insurance you're ever going to buy, because
Yeah.
our insurance company told us to take a walk. They didn't help us at all because mold is an exclusion. Every insurance company, at least in the States, maybe in the world, they don't cover mold. They don't cover
Right.
for microbial growth. So
Yeah.
I got to eat the total cost of my home. And so 3%, like that's some cheap insurance. Also, would you pay 3% on your new home to protect your family? How much are you going to?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much we've spent doctor bills trying to figure out what was wrong with us before we
Yeah.
lost our home. So that 3 to 5% is an increase. There's no way to hide that, but you're
Mm.
getting more value than you're paying for.
Yeah. Sometimes as humans, we just don't value something until we lose it, and health is certainly an aspect of that. I mean, there's lots of health conditions people have. I mean, a lot of people have sore back, but I'm not thinking about my back because it's not sore. But a person with a sore back, they're thinking about it every second of the day because it's such a pain point. So you obviously had that from the mold perspective, but some people just won't see it until it's hurt them in a costly way in some regards. Is there is there s with the mold that you experienced, was it visible, or it sounds like you weren't really aware to until you did some really thorough testing. Is that right?
That's right. So no, we didn't see it readily in our house. Um,
Yeah.
we had to find it. However, it was certainly transferring in our home. So there was
Yeah.
a few spots that we found it very prominent. Um, one was in our HVAC system. We had an unconditioned attic, and that thing was full. I've got video of it, and it looks like a petri dish. It's gross. The problem with that is that's distributing these mold spores and mycotoxins all over our house, everywhere, because that's what a air conditioning system does. Our heating system, it distributes conditioned air. So all of those particles were going everywhere. Another spot was um, under the windows in the wall is another spot, because what we found, and I'll say to anybody listening, congratulations if you water test your windows when you install them. I can't believe how many people don't. That is the best time to make sure windows don't leak, is when you're framing a house, you install the windows, you seal them up the way you have to for warranty, and then get a water hose and try to make them leak. It's so easy to do when you're in framing, and it's almost free. And it's super easy to fix when you're in that phase. Well, our windows, one, were not sealed well before the siding was put on, but also the quality of the windows is what I would consider a lumberyard window. That's probably tacky, but a low grade window. They weren't very nice, and they actually had aluminum frames, and they sweat a lot when you get the temperature difference. And that sweat would run down and sit on the windowsill and then find its way into the wall cavity. So underneath windows and around windows was another big source. We found in poorly built shower pans that were tile showers that didn't have a very rigorous build out process and a waterproofing process, with kind of a dual layer waterproofing that allows moisture to escape properly. And in fact, most tiles are installed with grout that is not waterproof. And so that water just goes right through that grout and gets behind the tile. And so those were some big areas that we found it. But we also did some other testing and found mold in other areas that was almost invisible, but it was some of the more toxic mold. It's white and almost impossible to see unless you shine a flashlight sideways across it and see it sticking up just a little. So it's very, very hard to find. It was widespread enough in our home that it was just, there was no way to guarantee we could remediate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and these the impact of the just is your health. How's your health of your wife? Is it sort of recovering? Or is things on the
They are,
tracking?
yeah. So there are very specific ways to detox from mold exposure, and mold exposure will mimic some other diseases. And I can tell you story after story after story of people that were diagnosed with MS or diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, or multiple other things, learning disabilities and so forth. And when they found that mold was in their environment and they detoxed from it, it went away. It was not MS. It was mold toxicity. But mold can also be a silent killer in the fact that it mimics aging. So some people just say, well, I'm getting old. I've got a sore back. I'm gaining some weight. My eyes aren't working as well as they used to. I can't remember things. I can't think of words. All of those things. Yeah. Did those things happen when you get older? Yes. Should they happen as fast as they're happening? No. And most of that is mold toxicity. I can't say most of it. A high percentage of people that are dealing with that probably should look at their environment and say, am I just getting old, or am I breathing this in all the time? Is it getting in through my skin all the time? And if they will be real with themselves, and it can be scary, because when you find it, now you got to do something about it. It can be a scary journey, but I can tell you from the other side of it, it's very rewarding. My kids are, I would say, 100% recovered. My daughter was old enough to learn to read, and she just couldn't learn to read. Well, kids are very resilient. Within 3 months of getting out of that home, she learned to read just like that fast. And it just things like that. I couldn't think of words to carry on a sentence because and it's called brain fog, but it's a
Mhm.
real frustrating thing, especially when you're trying to put together and present a multi-million-dollar home package to a client and you can't even think of the word. you know, that's um, but yes, I would say that myself and my kids are 100% recovered from that now, and my wife is getting really close to that. She's got some other health struggles that magnified it for her, but she's a lot better than she was.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really good to hear. And that as you say, so you've built the new place to much higher standard. Getting back to the piece of explaining that from a marketing standpoint, how do you go about building the trust in the value of what you're providing with the additional healthy homes philosophy, so they understand what it is, so they do choose your service as opposed to the next person who's not doing that and comes in obviously a little bit cheaper in that initial build phase?
Sure. No, that's tough. I think it starts with understanding that every client that wants to build a new home is not my client. And I've got to target clients that value what we offer. Um, Now, we offer high performance healthy construction, but we also offer elite luxury custom homes. Our median home price is 2.7 million. They're
Yeah.
large homes, they're beautiful homes. However, we've got some smaller ones going because they're very, very um, focused on health. And they come in and they say, I can't do the $2 million home, but here's what I can do. But I want to make sure that you build it because you understand how to make my family safe in this home. So that it's kind of working itself out. Our company, we've got 5 project managers, and we're middle size custom home builder, if you will. We build 8 to 10 homes a year, depending on their size. Um, so I don't need all the clients. I just need the right ones. But our
Mhm.
marketing is very pointed. You can look at our website. Um, on there, it's leonardcraftedhomes.com, and I'll drop it in the notes here. But that website has lots of video content of me explaining in homes what makes them high performance, what makes them safe. But really and truly, when we send out our marketing, we have a very pointed person that we're targeting, and
Yeah.
and that person is receiving the message.
Yeah, I love it. When you're really niched into something specific and a service offering that might be a little bit unique in the world and comes at a higher cost, but when you're niched, you're not battling it out with everybody else because you're providing something distinct. I'm a marketing guy, so I love it when there's a company that's got a specific and unique niche, because all of a sudden they're not competing on price alone. They're providing value. So it's a really dangerous and slippery slope if you're a business as a builder, custom home builder. If you've got no point of difference, you'll all of a sudden be competing on price, and that's a race to the bottom. And a lot of builders in our area, and I think it's a global kind of thing. We've had a lot of builders go out of business. You can imagine halfway through homes, and these are some of the big volume builders here in Australia, went out of business. So all these houses half built, and then all of a sudden the poor people who invested a bunch of money on their dream home, and then it's not done. Well, these are companies typically that were competing on price, and so that's just a dangerous. If something goes a little out of alignment, you're not making enough on the job. Materials go up. If you're locked into a fixed cost build, well, then you're making a loss. And if you multiply that out by however many homes you're building, that's kind of what
Right.
happened here. So I love what you're doing from when you've got a really core, strong belief of what's important in a home, as you have, because you've lived a story, and you've made that part of your marketing message. You're providing value. That's a wonderful space to be in. So well done, Craig, on your work. As you mentioned, you've got the website. So if people want to reach out, what was it again? Just
It's
mentioned that.
it's leonardcraftedhomes.com, and Leonard is
Awesome.
You
So
go
yeah, I'll
there.
put
We've got Facebook, Instagram. We've got all the social medias active, so you can catch us on there as well.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll put that in the show notes, and I would encourage all the listeners, even if they're in different parts of the world, they can obviously follow you on the social media platforms to see what you're up to as well. But obviously, if someone's local to you, hopefully they can reach out and make an inquiry as well. Thanks so much, Craig. It's been awesome. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Built, Trusted, Chosen. Brought to you by Uplift 360. Visit uplift360.com.au.